Everybody to our webinar today on preventing cyber attacks with end-user security awareness. I'd like to turn the webinar over now to Steve Racing. Steve will introduce CN Blackburn from KnowBe4. Steve's the president and CEO of ASMGi. So take it away, Steve.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for sharing some of your time with us today. And I'm Steve Racing, president and CEO of ASMGi. And my guest today is CN Blackburn from KnowBe4. And CN's a channel account manager. We work with her a lot. Thank you for sharing your time with us today, CN, and really look forward to tapping into your wisdom.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Great. Awesome. And not shown, I have Frank Yako with me, our CIO and Director of Strategic Initiatives. And for anybody who's been on a webinar before, Frank's a frequent participant, but I appreciate you being available, Frank.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
You know, we like to try to make this interactive as possible, so please take Paul up on the question thing. If you have thoughts or questions, post them. And we have a great topic. We have a great topic today about, trying to prevent cyber attacks based on raising the level of awareness and training your users, and I think that's it's certainly relevant for sure as social engineering and those things are just kind of moving up the scale. So I just want to jump in and introduce the. Whoops, I'm sorry, I forgot to click the slide. So hopefully you can all see that with smiling faces. But here we go. So the stats are kind of staggering. If we just set the tone for the presentation. Just from the Ponemon data breach report, I mean, we can see that the human element related to cyber attacks, I mean, data breaches in general caused by some human action is just staggering. But 24% of all the data breaches, are attributed to behavioral acts, and a lot of times they're accidental, not malicious, right? So that's it's certainly something. Worth talking about. $3.5 million, the average, cost of a breach that's caused by human action, by human error. $133, the average cost per record. And again, this one is just phenomenal. If you think about it, but 242 days to actually identify and remediate, clean up the mess, basically. So it's staggering if you think about those numbers, but I wanted to go a step further because it's great when you talk about what percentage of data breaches are attributable to human error, but how many data breaches are we talking about? Well, we're talking about just millions, and in this case billions, right? 1.2 billion data breaches in 2018, and this is kind of the trend over time. You see a big spike in 2017, and that was attributed to some specific activities that occurred and everything, but what's I think key to understand is that the trend is upward, clearly, right? So it's a big number, right? So 24% of 1.2 billion, that's 400 million, breaches are attributable to human error. It's staggering when you think about it in those terms. This slide is specific to healthcare, right? But just what I wanted to highlight here is if you notice the top part that's bracketed off attributable to human element, that's 61% of all breaches in the healthcare segment are attributable to human error. I mean, it's just mind-boggling when you think about it in these terms. This is an interesting discussion point. If you think about some of the trends in prevention of data breaches, a lot of things that are going on are incorporating artificial intelligence and machine learning and various different things like that. And that's one of the things that we at ASMGi are pretty close to, and we're working on analyzing historical breach data. So there are two real approaches to, I'll say risk management or quantifying cyber risk, and that's really understanding it from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective. And one of the mechanisms is to really analyze historical breach data and use machine learning to do that, right? And so that's really what this slide is about. And so if we mapped historical breach data to the CIS set of controls, what I highlight here on this slide is just three of them that jump out. Access control and privileged access management specifically. That's, need to know basis is clearly one of the top three. Data protection is clearly one of the top three. And then CIS 17, which is about having a security awareness program, is in the top three. But what's really interesting about this slide, if you take the other two, the top two, CIS 14, the privileged access management, and 13, the data protection, a percentage of those is attributable to human error, right? Losing an unencrypted laptop, that's a human mistake, right? Leaving it on the bus or the airplane or those kind of things. And, how many times do you hear about, breaches that involve some lost media? We don't really know what was on it. We lost it. I think we might have a problem, right? But it's interesting when you look at all of the breaches, historical, and they're all accumulated into a data set, that security awareness is one of the primary drivers, still from that perspective. So it's clearly supports what we probably already know. I thought this was interesting. So we have all the facts and figures about data breaches, but how do you actually lower this? So the cost per breach, in this report it's 3.9 million, 3.5 million, and I think in the other slide, but it's the same. It comes from the Ponemon Institute. So anyway, I could go on and on about the what's right about the reports themselves, but it's a statistical report. So, but here's what's interesting about this. Whether it's 3.9 or 3.5, who really cares? You can lower the cost of a data breach by doing certain things. And, employee training 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is number 6 on the list. And so basically what IBM and Ponemon calculated is that average cost of a data breach comes down by $270,000 if you're doing security awareness training, right? And part of the reason is because security awareness training is part of compliance requirements and best practices and things like that. And if you're not doing it, there's this whole concept of due care. If you're not doing the things you already know you should be, then you're going to be penalized probably more and things like that. But I think a lot of the cost reduction comes from compliance frameworks and various different things that include statements, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what I really want to highlight is if you do the right things and you are able to influence the behavior of your employees, avoidance is a high possibility. And so the key, I'll say, objective of doing security awareness training would be avoidance, right? So then your cost of a data breach would be the breach never happens and it's zero, right? That's ideal. So you can lower the cost if you are going to get breached, which I think consensus in the industry is it's not if but when, right? So you can lower your cost by doing it. Just any comments from Cian or Frank on this? Or?
Yeah, I think the point is that there's no denying that this is occurring out there in the world, and it just becomes a matter of how well prepared an organization is to deal with that.
Yeah.
And to make sure that there is, going back to your due care comment, that there is the ability to make sure that you have put every ounce of energy into prevention as much as possible.
Yep. And then, how about you, Sienna? You see it all the time, but is it possible to influence the behavior of users and not have the breach at all?
I think you're always susceptible to having a breach, but you can dramatically lower your risk by your users being educated. I think it's just, before I came to know before you hear it about the big ones in the news, maybe like a Target or Marriott, I think was last year, and things like that. But working here, we hear about them. You don't realize how many just small little ones every day all around the world happen. It's staggering. And I learned so much more about how to be a better employee from a security perspective, just from working here. I didn't know anything about creating safe passwords and things like that, and working here has really opened my eyes, and in my personal life as well, right? Because I don't want my identity to be lost. It's the same type of thing. So I think you can definitely have a dramatically different, or lower risk if by educating it, but getting rid of it altogether is definitely would definitely be a challenge.
Yep. I use an example, Cian. Stu, your CEO, I get an email pretty much daily, I think. I don't know what the cadence is, but in any event, one day I got an email from Stu, and one of the topics on it was, hey, there's a new phishing campaign, and people are going to try to impersonate Office 365, and they're going to point you to redirect you to a website and ask you for your credentials, and they're trying to steal your Office 365 credentials. I had one of those emails in my inbox, right? So, but what I was able to do was automatically notify everybody in the company, hey, this is happening, it's real, look out for this, and don't fall for it, basically. But that's it's challenging. There's no question.
Yep. I mean, and there was another one I know. Sadly, recently with like Kobe Bryant's death, for example, like he didn't. I'm sorry. Is that anyways? When a celebrity dies or something big happens like that, they also like try and take advantage of that type of situation, and you'll start seeing, emails. So anything big or something's happening in politics, they try and take advantage of that. So current events can be such a huge thing as well, in professional and personal lives. So it can be very sad the way they try and take advantage of you.
Agreed. The bad guys are getting smarter. So I wanted to just touch on, so how relevant is security awareness anyway, right? So that's, and what we see, we do a lot of work in regulated industries. We do a lot with, various different frameworks and compliance requirements and those kind of things. And security awareness training shows up, pretty much across the board. It's actually a client contractual requirement in a lot of cases and those kind of things. But just a couple of examples really from a compliance requirement. If you're, if PCI is one of your requirements, 12.6 is implement a formal security awareness program. So it's a have to, it's not a want to, right? And there's a reason. There's a reason for that. HIPAA, it's in there, implement a security awareness and training program. COVID, it's in there. We see it in a lot of compliance requirements, but also, best practice-driven frameworks. A lot of people are adopting NIST. We could probably spend an entire conversation on that specifically, but there is a security awareness component to various different frameworks, including NIST, 850, which is an 853. So there's it's part of all of the security-driven best practices at NIST and across all federal regulations and those kind of things, but also the ISO 27001 and 2 framework, which is pretty popular, kind of the de facto standard, I would say, from an international security standard. But again, making sure everybody is trained up, and CIS obviously. Security awareness and training programs is a key part. So when I answer the question, how relevant is it and how important is it, it's very relevant and very important. It shows up in pretty much all of the compliance requirements and all of the frameworks and those types of things. So how do you actually, solve this problem? And one of the things we talk about at ASMGi a lot is, leveraging a holistic approach to cybersecurity. And you can't just go out and buy a piece of technology and expect your problems to go away, right? It's really 3 pillars from our perspective that are required. You have to have a program in place. Your program typically defines, what are your SLAs, what are your strategic objectives, it's really tying a technical solution to business requirements and outcomes and objectives and those kind of things. But you have to have technology today. You can say you can't do it with just technology, but you have to have technology, and you have to have a platform like no before. And the reason is there's just too much to do to pay people to do it. Manually. So it's automation is key, and having a sensible platform in place. But the other pillar, which often gets left out, is operationalizing your solution. And I say it often gets left out because people buy solutions with the hope that it's going to solve their problems, but you still have to do it. You have to do it not just today, not just implement it, but you have to do it every single day. And so hopefully your technology solution is going to make it easy, right, and automate and orchestrate some of these things, but you still have to operationalize it and understand the impact to your organization from an operational aspect, right?
And Steve, we actually had a question that I think directly applies to this, basically asking what are some of the difficulties in implementing a cyber security initiative, and I think the point is that you have to address each of these three pillars. I mean, there's just no way just to say that a software solution or some type of technology is going to solve that problem. That it takes commitment from the organization. You have to operationalize it, and ultimately that helps with realizing your ROI on any investment that you make.
Yep.
Any type of technology or solution to support that.
Yep. And so good catch, Frank, because I think this speaks to this is probably more general in nature, and I'm not certain whether it really applies to security awareness or any cyber initiative that's enterprise-wide, but this slide certainly applies to any cyber initiative. And I think if you lose sight of any one of these things. So one of the challenges that we see a lot of times is people say, hey, we need to do DLP, or we need to do security awareness, or we need to do this, or we need to do that, and they rush right out and buy a package and say, okay, now we've addressed the problem. And what we're saying is that isn't really addressing your problem, and probably what you ought to do before that is figure out what you want to accomplish,
right,
and then make sure that you get the right tool for that. Sian, do you have any comments on that? From the product standpoint, and it's worth noting that KnowBe4 is in the magic. I don't have the Magic Quadrant as part of this slide deck, but you're so far to the right in the Magic. I don't know if the audience is familiar with the Gartner Magic Quadrants or whatever, but KnowBe4 is clearly in the upper right-hand corner, which is where you want to be, and so far out in front of everybody. It's clearly a best-in-class product and platform and those kind of things. But what kind of challenges, Sian, do you foresee as far as getting a cyber initiative deployed enterprise-wide?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest problem that we see from the training perspective is getting people to actually want to take the training, right? Because I think everybody has that archaic view of training in their head where, you lock people in a cold conference room, you give them some coffee and donuts, and then you watch some 30 or 45-minute long security awareness training, and then people are falling asleep or starting to text on their phones or, whatever the case may be. So the challenge has really been to get people to actually take the trainings, and are they learning from the trainings? Are you noticing if it's really making a difference? How do you know that they're actually, this is lowering your company's risk at getting some sort of data breach? So I think, KnowBe4, that's part of how we've become very successful is we really focus on those two areas because we saw that was the biggest problem in any kind of training program out there, and I'll go into how we address those on my part of this, but yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge is getting people to actually learn and are finding out if they are learning.
Yep. Well, and we are certainly going to talk more about that. I wanted to talk a little bit in the spirit of program, then technology, and then operationalizing it. And KnowBe4's approach to really putting a security awareness program together. You have some tools that are part of your platform that will help customers, go down this path and start to actually make sure you're addressing the right things with your approach to security awareness and puts best practices in place right out of the gate. But my input or my advice to customers is generally, make sure your policy work and your program work is really outside of the technology platform. But in this case, there's some tools actually inside the technology platform that can help you. But it isn't a replacement for doing the things outside of it and making sure you have all that stuff in place, right? But I did want to point out that KnowBe4 includes some tools to help you put a security awareness program together. Are you seeing this leveraged often, Sian, or?
Yeah, that's actually mandatory. So when you first sign up with us to implement the program, you'll be guided to answer. It's our automated security awareness program tool, and it's a quick questionnaire that discusses that asks you questions about like your industry and what you're trying to accomplish, your users, things like that, and then it spits out kind of a program project guide, right, of how we suggest you implement your security awareness program, and you'll have, from engaging your stakeholders to communicating it with your employees, how to pick the right trainings and how to progress with them, and how to pick the right simulated phishing tests and how to progress with them. You also get, you get a representative from KnowBe4 that will hold your hand through that whole process as well. So between, that program that you have up there, the Automated Security Awareness Program, and your dedicated resource from KnowBe4, we really want to make sure you're successful. We don't want to just kind of give it to you and walk away. Be like, good luck.
Right. Yeah. Well, here's another piece of information that I love this. I love this approach, but I can't claim it because it came from KnowBe4 as well. But it's great when you look at executing the plan, and I can tell everybody on the call that my objective is that you get off this call with a clear understanding of how you actually do a security awareness program. And the information that KnowBe4 really subscribes to is plan like a marketer. And what's interesting about that to me is it's multimodal, right? You can't just, to your point, Cian, today, like if you're just going to throw a PowerPoint up and tell somebody that they have to go look at it, they're not going to look at it anyway, and they're probably going to fall asleep, right? But if you're multimodal and you're doing all of these things to try and reinforce, I'm a firm believer that if you want to change behaviors, you first have to change thinking, and the way that you do that is with repetition and finding new ways to present information and relevant ways, to your point, right? So that's I love the plan like a marketer. You have to plan for different types of activities and those kind of things, but execute it like an attacker, right? And this is where the testing comes into play. And your cyber team should be sending out phishing emails and finding out who is prone to take the bait, if you will, right? So and it isn't from a disciplinary standpoint per se. It's from an opportunity to train standpoint and create that awareness. And knowing where in your organization you need really to focus.
Right, and that's part of the intent of this whole session is, I know we have a number of individuals that come from the human resources, the compliance, the training, the organizational change management areas of different organizations. This is certainly an important security topic, but the ways that these events or programs are successful within organizations is where there is corporate-wide or organization-wide adoption, and recognizing that these are user behavioral types of challenges, and the experts in that are typically within the realm of human resources, training, and compliance, because it does really require an organizational change management focus and adopting programs that align with that as well.
Right. So again, technology is a great tool for accomplishing these things, but it's really
it's the facilitator.
That's exactly correct. I want to take some time. We thought we'd do something kind of fun and just transition over to doing an online poll. And Paul's going to cue this up and push it out. So I'm not sure what it's going to look like to the end users, but if you can just answer the question with the poll that comes out, and we'll take a look at the results and we'll analyze it. So a couple of key things maybe that I'll mention as it relates to this is nobody can see, nobody knows who you are. So please answer it honestly. And I think it'll cue up some interesting conversation as part of that. But just nobody else is going to know who's answering and who you are, or even numbers and things like that. So let's see how we do, and then we'll address it and talk through that. So take it away, Paul, if you haven't already.
Yeah, hi
Does
everybody.
the
The users are seeing the survey now, Steve, and
Okay.
they are answering it, which is great. And we'll have the results momentarily.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to end the survey now, and I'm going to send the results off to the audience so everybody will see the results here. Give it another couple seconds if anybody else wants to chime in. All right, here we go.
Okay, so are we final now, Paul? Is that, and we can start
Yes, we are done.
talking? Okay, great. Well, so here, let's go ahead and analyze the results, and then we'll go from there. But I'm not sure exactly who all is seeing what, but 10% of the responses were none. 40% were 1 to 2 times per year, 35% 3 to 5 times, 10% 6 to 12 times, and 5% more than 12 times. So the majority of the users are kind of right in the middle of the range. So somewhere between 1 and 5 times, I'll say, accounts for 75% of the audience. So congratulations on that, and hopefully we can help you figure out what best practices are and how to accomplish this and influence the behavior of your employees some more. But we thought it'd be interesting to kind of create a tale of two companies, right? So one that is doing training and one that isn't doing training. And from a storyboard standpoint, call me Mr. Obvious, but if you're not doing training, you're probably assuming risks potentially of people clicking on phishing emails or being subject to various different types of social engineering and those kind of things. But in generally an uninformed set of users of technology, right? And if you are doing security awareness training, you're probably raising the level of awareness of your people and at least hopefully influencing them to know what to look for and to know what to do and what not to do. You want to comment on this?
Yeah, and I think everyone's well aware because of the publicity around some of these attacks and how sophisticated they're getting. Not that again anyone's trying to trick your users or employees, but it's very difficult to tell the difference between a phishing attack or some type of social engineering and normal business communications anymore. And that's where the exercising comes in and is critical because it's really important to make sure that no one is just clicking on things without thinking twice about it and having in the back of their mind whether this is truly a legitimate request or not, even if it is from what supposedly looks like someone within your own organization or a business partner. So it just helps to raise that awareness level.
Yep. Cian, any comments? I don't know if we lost Cian, but I'm going to go ahead and move forward then on the slide.
Sorry,
there
I was on mute.
Okay.
It got a little loud behind me, so I forgot I was on mute. No, I was just saying I echo what Frank says. It's definitely what the consistency, as I'll go into a little bit later, is what is key to, like you said, too, in the beginning, changing the behavior. If you're going to change the behavior, you got to change the thinking process first. So consistency is what it is.
Yep. So I've just got a couple more slides, and I'm going to turn it over to Cian, but I wanted to share a little bit of information post-survey. So actual data. So KnowBe4 will track for you, what training your users are seeing and what the results are, right? And through ongoing testing, you can tell if people are clicking and if people aren't, and those kind of things. And again, it's useful information. that's really all it is, and you build a program around how to use that. But what I found interesting about, so KnowBe4 has what's called a fish-prone percentage by industry, and if you look at actual data from real KnowBe4 customers, the trends are, it's astounding the impact that you can have to behavioral change by training and testing. And it's not just training and it's not just testing. So that, I think, is a key consideration, right, that people need to know, that is you can't just watch a PowerPoint slide and expect your users to be trained, right? You have to train and then test and train some more and test some more and train some more and test some more. But if you do this for 12 months, KnowBe4 actual data says you're going to lower your click rate basically on your test by 91%. It's a phenomenal outcome and it's real, right? So that it's very interesting and very encouraging that behaviors can be influenced by awareness and training and those kind of things.
And these are real statistics from the over 30,000 KnowBe4 customers. So it's something that every organization has to track the ROI on the types of investments that we're talking about and recommending, and this is one way that you can actually measure and prove that within your own organizations.
Yep. So lastly, I wanted to just answer the question why. So why is it that you're able to influence user behavior by doing these things? And I don't know how many of the audience has ever heard of the conscious competence ladder, Noel Birch's competence ladder, but it's true in all cases, right? So we're all the same species, we're all a lot more alike all over the world, and we are different, right? That's one of the things that again, foundationally believe. And we all start out in an unconscious incompetent state, right? So if we don't know about it, we don't know what we don't know, right? And somebody has to tell us, and as soon as somebody does, then we know what we don't know. So we're moving up one rung of the ladder. But the key is to get your users into the top two tiers, right? And ideally all the way to the top. But conscious competence is you know something, you know, right? So, and it's a great example is that Office 365 spam. I just finished reading an article that I knew this was a real thing, and then I had one in my inbox that I didn't get to till I got farther down in my inbox, but I already knew it. So I was in that third tier, right? I had to think about it, though. This is the key about tier number 3, is that you still have to think about, what action to take. And tier 4 is basically, it's the term second nature, right? You just know already, like brushing your teeth. You may have to think about brushing your teeth, but you probably do it pretty automatically and those kind of things. There are a lot of things that we do automatically, like behavioral things, driving and everything like this. I remember it's a personal development work I did before. The instructor used to always say, everybody has a trust issue and they don't trust anybody, but that's not really true. You drive every day and you drive literally within inches of cars going 60 miles an hour in the opposite direction. You can't tell me you don't trust them. It's true, but it's second nature, right? You don't think about it, and if you did, maybe you would never drive again. I don't know, but anyway, I thought it was interesting. I'm going to kick it over to Cien, and feel free to comment on anything we talked about, Cien, or just take over on your thing. And if you want me to click your sides, just tell me to move them forward, and I'm happy to, or you can just take it yourself.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm able to do it myself. I'll give it a try here shortly. But that was actually a great intro, and it made me think of something that our CEO always talks about. And I had never heard about it until before I started working here. And it's called the OODA loop, which is basically what pilots are trained to do, is observe, orient, decide, and then act, right, before they do anything. And that's ultimately what the hackers are trying to mix up for you. Like everything you kind of do in life, you observe it, you orient yourself to the situation, then you decide what you're going to do, and then you act on that. And they're trying to, take out those two middle ones, the orient and decide. They want you to observe and act immediately, right, to maybe create some sort of confusion or fluster or, especially like those CEO fraud type ones where a CEO might be emailing somebody or claiming to be the CEO, right? Emailing somebody in the organization, asking them to do something or to click on something or whatever the case may be. And those are definitely the kinds where you're like, oh, I gotta, the CEO's asking me to do something. I gotta do it right now. And you quickly click on that link before really thinking like, well, would the CEO really email me to ask that? Like, that's odd. Maybe I should look into this further, So anyways, it's something that we talk about internally here often, and that the conscious ladder you've got there kind of made me think of that. But anyways, as it's basically our mission is to make your employees make better security decisions every day, and we do have over 30,000 customers. And actually, when I started, we had maybe in the teens. So I think it was like 15 or 16,000 customers, and I've been here, it'll be 2 years next year, so we've doubled, right? And it's the same with the amount of employees here. I was an employee number like 422, and we should be closing in on over 1,000 employees here in the next month or two, so more than doubled from an employee standpoint. So, and that's more to the testament, like this problem really is serious. It really is a growing problem that every customer, and that's another point to this slide, right? This pie chart shows all the different industries that we work with, and it's literally everybody. Like hackers are just blanketing the market space. It's not like they're going after anybody in particular. Whoever will click is who they're going after. And unfortunately, once you do receive some sort of data breach or ransomware or something like that, you're targeted even more. Now they think that you're like a low-hanging fruit that can that they can easily get into, especially in those how Steve showed it was over 200 days to really realize what happened and fix the holes or do it, try and remediate. And that's really when they start hammering you even more is in that time frame. So it's really quite unfortunate. And just the statistics of how often it happens. I mean, the 91% of data breaches are caused by spear phishing attacks. So it really is, and the spear phishing attacks are the ones where they're specific. They know about you, right? They've found information on your website. They found information you've maybe posted on social media or in the news that your company's doing, and then they're specifically sending you an email that's targeting something that's going on in your organization, that's something that's going on in your life, to make it seem very realistic and to mess up your OODA loop, take out that orient and decide, and you just observe and then you act. And so those are really the biggest issues in regards to data breaches. And again, 30% of those data breaches are caused by repeat offenders, people that are still clicking on the same things over and over, that are not, they're not learning, they're not taking this seriously. And I think, like a lot of things in life, people just are like, oh, this wouldn't happen to me. It's not, this isn't common. This only happens to companies like, Marriott or these massive companies that are trying to get taken advantage of, not this little, maybe mom and pop shop or smaller, bank or something like that. But it really does. It happens to everybody.
One of the examples CM, that just in one of our conversations you had talked about that scenario where there's a company outing, for example, like a company picnic or whatever, and some employee of the company posts something on Facebook, and then the next thing you know, they're getting an email from the CEO that says, hey, I know we're having our company picnic on Saturday. Can you please go buy some Amazon gift cards and take some photos of the front and back for me, and those kind of things, right? But to your point, contextually, it makes sense. Like, how would they know? Like, how would the bad guys know? But it's really, I think it's characteristic of how sophisticated spear phishing attacks can be, right? People know something, and it breaks down our defenses. When somebody says something that they know, we automatically resort to, oh, they must be a trusted entity, right? Because how else would they know this? But there are a lot of ways they could know this, right? We're all leaving digital trails all over the place. It's very, very interesting and scary for sure.
It is. Our culture has become so in tune with, providing so much information about our lives out there. Like before I would, maybe post on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media, like, oh, I'm on this vacation here. I can't wait. This is what we're doing tomorrow. And this is, and now after working for the company, I would never post pictures of my vacation till I'm home from my vacation because I don't want anybody to know that I'm out of town or where I'm at or what I'm doing. So I often, don't do things. I definitely do things differently on social media and just my personal life from working here, knowing about the risks that are out there and how much more sophisticated. I mean, we see them every day here. They give us examples every day of real-life phishing attacks that customers are getting, and it really is scary how detailed they can be and how personal they can be, and you don't realize that you're just giving them that information and how easy it is for people to find. So, the average cost of a ransomware attack being $133,000, like that is dramatic. I mean, I will say that one of my family members, I think I was telling Frank and Steve this, and the last time we spoke, one of my family members, we were having dinner the other weekend, and he's a city manager. He's an IT manager for a city located here in Florida, and that Friday they had gotten ransomware. They were asking for over $300,000 in ransomware, and I think he spent, unfortunately, the entire dinner outside on the phone, negotiating with hostage negotiators. Like, we have companies that do this now, and I think in the end he ended up paying about like $150,000 or something like that, half of it. But so when I see the statistic, I mean, it's true, and this is just a small city that's in, it's not a big, it's not a New York City or an LA or something like that. That's a huge chunk of money to lose, especially if it's a small business. So. And even more staggering is that, that next statistic of 75% of companies that, are infected with ransomware are running up-to-date endpoint protection. So, it's not always that you didn't patch the right server or you didn't do the right update to your software or things like that. Everything can be 100% up-to-date. It's those, like that example Steve gave of somebody claiming to be the CEO asking you to go buy some gift cards. There's no links in that. There's no attachments to that. That will blast right through whatever of the best technology is that you have up, because there's nothing in there to make any red flags, and that's the kind of sophistication that we're up against. So
Yep.
It's just
and
crazy
it's
how
worth
crazy
noting
it's getting.
that I see a lot of conventional thinking that my company is going to protect me, like for example,
Right.
but what I like to point out is that you can't prevent, if there's a link that comes to you in an email and you click on it, you can't just block everything. And the reason is because your people wouldn't be able to do business, right? So there are known IP addresses or known locations that you don't want to allow your users to go to, and that's web filtering is very effective at doing that. But you can't block everything. And these emails include links that are probably not part of a database somewhere. They're spinning them up on, Azure and AWS at a very fast rate. And as soon as they're on a list with that one, they shut it down and they spin up a new one. So it's the problem is not that the technology isn't protecting me. The problem is that the users are clicking on the links, and that's it's worth noting for sure.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. And I think, we've kind of hammered home on this pretty well about how, so the business email compromise is basically that CEO fraud email that we were talking about earlier, somebody claiming to be an executive trying to get their employees to buy something or do something. Again, emails coming through with no attachments, links, that goes right through whatever the best technology is that you have up. So we really focus on how people are that critical last line of defense, your critical layer. They're really the ones that need to be educated, and it's the human element. It's extremely hard. You can't control the human element, right? The best thing you can do is arm them with the best defense possible, which I think in this case is education. So really how we work, I think our method to our madness, right, is we suggest you train your users at least once a quarter. You fish them, do a simulated phishing attack, testing them at least once a month. And then, we've come out with tons of tools to help you analyze, to really understand if your users are actually learning, because like I was saying in the beginning, that seemed to be the two biggest things, actually getting people to take the training, and then are they actually learning from the training. So I think in the training that we've kind of focused on, we have the largest training library there is out there. We have over 1,000 pieces of training content, which can be very overwhelming, right? And we don't ever anticipate anybody to take advantage of that much training, but the idea is the variety, right? We have so many different, there's so many different customers out there, so many different organizations that are having this problem in all different kinds of industries with all different kinds of employees working for them. You know, we really want to make sure it's relatable to everybody. And we also really focus on making these trainings short. Like we have tons that are less than 5 minutes, less than 10 minutes, you know, less than 15 minutes, and very minimal that are 30 minutes or more. And, you know, when you're asking to train at least once a quarter, sometimes most people are even once a quarter, like I do not have time to take a 30-minute training, you know, so that's when you just do the 5-minute long trainings or the 10-minute long trainings. And the trainings are also supposed to be very entertaining, right? We've started to focus on creating training more as if it's a TV series. We have a drama series where, you know, Company A is paying this inside man to infiltrate Company B because Company B is going through a merger and Company A will make more money on that merger if they get that inside information, right? So it goes into, you know, and each episode, they're less than 10 minutes long, and sometimes you don't even realize that you're watching security awareness training till the end, and it kind of goes over what you would have learned and how you can relate it to, you know, your everyday life at work or personal life for that matter. We also have funny ones that are like spoofs on reality TV, again, that are like maybe 5 minutes or less, and, you know, you laugh at them and you get to know the characters, and, you know, it's we're really trying to make it so it's relatable for the end user. There's games that you can play with, you know, the gamification. So I think stepping out of the box and making the training effective is more around, you know, just like when you're a kid, you learn better when you're having a good time and you're entertained. And so that's where we're really focused on in the training. And with that, right, we do suggest you do the training at least once a quarter. But we also have it set up to do remedial training. So if they, you know, the phishing emails are almost designed to test if they've learned from the trainings, right? You might be doing a training about how to create safe passwords or why creating safe passwords is important, and then run a simulated phishing campaign shortly thereafter about, you know, asking them to update their password to their Outlook email or Office 365 or whatever it is that you have, you know, and then if they click on that, you know, phishing email, then now they get signed up to take remedial training where they're maybe taking a separate training that's a little bit more in depth about why and how you create, you know, safe passwords type of thing. So doing the remedial training, the quarterly training, we also see it being super successful. I think Steve had even mentioned kind of before, it's almost treating it like a marketing campaign. So, you know, maybe February is Safe Passwords Month, and so you hang up some posters about creating safe passwords. You know, distribute a newsletter about creating safe passwords. You do a training about creating safe passwords, and then maybe you send out that phishing email about you know, updating your password for Outlook or what have you. So really like incorporating it so that really getting more of the buy-in from your users because they're seeing the posters around, they're getting the newsletters, you know. We've also created some little competition, right? So we have in the console when you sign up, you can create groups that can compete against each other. You can change their name. You know, they can have, you know, an X-Men team and an Avengers team, or you know, whatever is, you know, cool with your company to create little teams, and whoever, you know, completes the training first gets these certificates or these badges or, you know, whatever that we've created for you to use, or you can edit or create your own. But I think that creating some healthy competition within the workplace is also a big key to getting people to take their trainings. So we've really tried to come at it from all different angles to make sure your users are actually taking the training. And then the types of reporting that we are looking at is really to, you know, we want to help show that the risk of your company is going down, right? Like, are they, you know, have they been clicking, has their amount of simulated phishing emails clicking, you know, has that gone down? Are they passing their trainings? Things like that. You get a lot of reports to show how all of your users are doing in regards to that. I mean, we really have to get it right 100% of the time, right? Hackers have to get it right one time, and they're in. So the odds are definitely not in our favor there. and in the beginning, what we'll do to help start the grading, right, is you send out that initial simulated phishing email. And actually, just this morning in our meeting, they talked about they've done another survey, and this has actually gone up. It's now on average about a 38% fish-prone percentage. So it's interesting that, the amount of people clicking has gone up on average. And I do think we are getting to be more of a global company, so a lot of that research is coming from other countries as well. This isn't just a United States thing for sure, but still the average was it gets cut in half after 90 days of the simulated phishing and training, and then all the way down to the 2% after 1 full year. So that's really where most of our clients are at once they've been with us for a year, and that's our goal is to get you there with our methodology in regards to the training. The other thing that we kind of focus on that I wanted to make sure I commented on is, it is spear phishing attacks, like it said in the beginning. 91% of these data breaches are caused by spear phishing attacks. But there's also big other things like creating safe passwords. I did not know how to create a safe password before I worked here. And did I have the same password for like 90% of the things I used? Absolutely. And now I don't. And I realize the reason why. And so there's things like that, or, tailgating, as we call it, which is like letting people into the building that you don't know, how to act on social media. Maybe you shouldn't be posting that you're on vacation, or, that your company's having a potluck that Friday, or malicious websites, how to pick those out. So we also offer assessments that you can have your employees take. It's just we had to do it here when it was first released. It was only like 10, 15 minutes. For me to complete, and then it gives that admin a report of how, where everybody's scoring, how people, if they're more educated on, phishing emails and less educated on passwords and things like that. And then you can start really training your users a lot more intelligently on, where they're at in their education and security awareness in general. So we really do try to cover the gamut of all the different types of security awareness and try to make sure your users are learning and more what they need to learn and less what they don't need to learn.
Yeah, just had a quick question. How do you see organizations tying this into their overall employee training programs, their learning management systems? Does it become just another element of overall training and performance?
Yeah. I mean, we highly suggest that you make this part of like your employees' like key performance metrics, right? Like if they have quarterly reviews, yearly reviews, every 6 months, whatever the case is, tie this into that. How are they doing with their trainings? Are they passing them? Are they clicking on their phishing emails? If you already have a learning management system in place, ours works. You can upload ours into your learning management system. We do have the ability to upload other trainings into our system. So yeah, I mean, it really is. We try to make it very flexible because obviously a lot of companies may already have HR type trainings and maybe smaller security awareness trainings, and they want to use ours as well. So we try to be very flexible with the mechanics of that, at least.
And I know Steve talked about some of the compliance frameworks at the early part of the conversation. Does the reporting support how organizations need to demonstrate that they're meeting those types of requirements?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one of our reporting tools is extremely flexible. Like you literally type or say anything into the reporting tool, and it will spit out the report that you've asked for. We also have different kinds of like report cards, like if you're looking to see like, oh, what's my accounting department's, fish-prone percentage, the percentage of people that have been clicking on the phishing emails, or, what percentage of people in IT have taken this training and things like that. So, yeah, you can get very, very granular with the types of reporting that we offer to show ROI.
Excellent. I want to make sure we save some time for customer or for attendee questions. I think you're pretty much at the end of your content.
I am.
How about that? Good guess, huh?
Good job.
I wanted to mention a couple. Well, thank you so much for that. I have a couple of questions too, but I want to do the attendee questions first. But before I do that, I want to mention a special offer that we put together for our attendees. And it's all great to talk about this stuff, but I'm a firm believer in the best way to learn things and gain clarity around them is to actually do them. And for our attendees today that together with KnowBe4, we are willing to offer a free phishing, I'll say, experiment, right, a test, an actual test. So if you send us your users, we'll execute a phishing test against them and then give you a baseline of where you're at from that. So if anybody is interested in taking advantage of this offer, please let us know and contact us from that perspective, and we can talk through how to execute it and how to get it going and those kind of things. So just moving into some user attendee questions. What I want to talk about, actually, so here's a question. How do you keep current and relevant on your training material? So you mentioned, I think, Sienna, earlier that you have 900 and something pieces of training material. How do you ensure that they're current and relevant so that you're training against the, things that are impactful today for an enterprise?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a team of people that's dedicated to that. Our courseware team, all they do is create trainings, retire trainings. They also create the phishing templates, retire phishing templates when they feel like they're not relevant anymore. So we do just have a team of people that's their sole focus. I think that was actually, I'm glad you mentioned it, because that was another area where we saw a lot of people complaining about security awareness training. They're like, oh gosh, we've been taking the same one every year. I'm not learning anything new.
Right.
We do, especially the ones we suggest that you take on a quarterly perspective. Those are updated every single year. For sure, and then we come out with new ones based on what we see going on, in the industry.
Yep, excellent. And then another attendee question is how do you pick a topic? And so I'm just going to elaborate on this a little bit. And my interpretation of the question is basically, you have 900 pieces of material to pick from. If you're going to do this quarterly or 12 times a year, I mean, how do you pick which ones to do? Do you have any suggestions on that, or how are companies that, in your opinion, going about this?
Yeah, so we have actually the ability in there where what's called targeted training, right? And you can go in there and click, okay, so for my HR team, I only want one that's 5 minutes or less. What kind of trainings do you suggest for them? And then it'll pop up with the selection that we would suggest for your HR team to take, and then you can kind of preview them and see which ones you think will relate to your specific employees best. So we do have that area where you can kind of drill down into the different trainings based on the criteria that you're looking for. But like I said, you also have that dedicated resource from KnowBe4 that you can talk to and helps you pick kind of what trainings to start with and how to progress, and the types of trainings to be offering your different departments and things. So we do suggest you train your departments differently, right? Like somebody in payroll might be getting emails. A common one we hear often actually is somebody claiming to work for the company and emailing somebody in payroll saying like, oh, my bank account number's changed. Here it is. Can you please update my direct deposit to this new bank account number? So people in payroll need to know what to look for in those types of things versus if you have somebody like, in sales or something, they're not going to get an email like that. So between that targeted training and our customer success team hand holding you through that, I think we try and make sure you get the right trainings picked.
Yep. Looks like we're a couple minutes over, but I want to get one last question in. So in addition to educating users, and this is kind of an emerging technology question, I think. Do you have any thoughts about artificial intelligence and how it can impact? Will it be successful in the future? Are people able to use it? Innate in the training mechanism, or is it a defense that's going to obsolete the need for training? What are your thoughts, Sienna, about artificial intelligence and how that will impact cyber at organizations?
I think it's just going to make it worse. I don't think it's going to, help prevent anything from happening. I know that we are slowly trying to use artificial intelligence within our console to automatically read your users' behavior as, what they're clicking on and how they're doing on their trainings to train them more efficiently. The assessments that we're providing are just kind of the first step for us in that direction. Ultimately, where we'd like to be is, somebody clicks on a phishing email about, updating, like the example, updating your password, and the console sees that you clicked on that, and it automatically assigns you training without you even having to set it up at all, in the beginning to do that. So, I do think artificial intelligence in that way, we want to be able to slowly start training your users more and more efficiently based off their actions. But I think from the hacker side, using artificial intelligence is just going to get smarter and smarter in different ways for them to hack you more broadly. Like they might be able to just have to do one action, and then it can lead to, thousands and thousands of phishing emails all over the world. So.
Yep, that's a great point. And a lot of times when I talk about this topic to people, I mention that artificial intelligence is a tool on both sides, the light side and the dark side, right? So it's actually increasing the efficiency of attacks, and they're getting smarter using machine learning, and we're trying to, do anomaly detection and all these various different techniques to leverage machine learning to get smarter to prevent it. But we're not the only ones with access to that technology, so it's it's a little bit bittersweet like that. And I just wanted to mention one other thing. You mentioned this, CN, and congratulations to you for learning not to use the same password every place, because that's a common problem. And I see this, I just want to mention the dark web report, because we made that as an offer as people were beginning to register, I think, for the event, and it's something that's key, particularly if you use your work email address and password for any of your personal things, and somebody gets breached, like Target, it's in there, right? And then it's on the dark web, and everybody knows it, and we have a mechanism for basically reporting on that. But
we're finding, unfortunately, employees of organizations that are using their business credentials, the exact account and password, on sites that have nothing to do with their organization, as far as SaaS or web business applications, things like gaming sites and all types of things. So
clearly a place where some awareness training can be helpful, for sure. But if anybody out there is using your work credentials on other sites, it'd be a good idea to change your password. And please ask us.
Help in identifying where that might be happening.
Send you a dark web report and see if those credentials are already posted. And there's a good chance they will with some of the large breaches that have happened. And this is what's amazing. I mean, like I found out some of my credentials that were on the dark web because of things like the Adobe breach, for example, right? So it's not just personal sites; it can be other work sites. But in any event, it's a real problem and a real threat. And password management continues to be. This is to your point, CN, about training 20 years ago was probably talking about password management, but today we're still talking about it. You may know, everybody may know, not to write it on a Post-it and stick it on your laptop or your desktop, but it's still a challenge. But we are over on time. I want to thank everybody so much for your time today. Thank you, CN, for your wisdom and just explaining your platform and all these things. And everybody, if we can help in any way, please let us know, and we are willing to do a free phishing test and help you put up
in the dark web scan if you think you have some password issues out there.
So thanks, anybody. Any closing remarks, CN?
No, this has been great. Thank you so much for having me on this call and setting it up. And hopefully this was informative to you guys out there. And happy to answer any other questions or help out with these free phishing tests for anybody who's wanting to do that.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Paul.
Have a great day.